Working together to end suicide, the San Diego Suicide Prevention Council is a collaborative community-wide effort focused on realizing a vision of zero suicides in San Diego County. Our mission is to prevent suicide and its devastating consequences in San Diego County.
My thought was like, wow, if that's what my mom really thinks, then okay, I'll just go ahead and take my life. I mean, I'm tired of disappointing people, making them frustrated.
Jim Greer knows the face of suicide. After struggling with bipolar disorder, he felt overwhelmed. He didn't know where to get help and attempted to take his life as a teenager. Former news anchor Carol LeBeau talks about how her mother's clinical depression went on for years until her suicide more than 30 years ago.
When my mother died 34 years ago, she had all kinds of symptoms that pointed to the fact that this probably would have been the next step. And she'd been suffering for years.
In San Diego, many attempted suicide victims are taken to local hospitals. By the 1990s, suicide had reached an all-time high in San Diego County. That's when Scripps Mercy Hospital teamed up with local and county agencies to find a solution in preventing suicide.
In late 1999, a review of county medical examiner data revealed an astounding development. Suicide had become the #1 cause of non-natural death overall in San Diego County.
What we know is that suicide is preventable, and that if the whole community engages in promising practices or best practices, that we have a chance to eradicate this problem.
The San Diego Suicide Prevention Council is taking the lead to prevent suicide in San Diego County. And there is hope. Suicide is preventable and treatment is effective. Talking about suicide doesn't cause it, but instead opens up the line of communication with those at risk.
I lost a good friend of mine my freshman year in high school. And I remember getting the news from my brother and, just collapsing in the hallway and just being overwhelmed with all these emotions of guilt and shame and anger and sadness.
Stan Collins is a survivor and is part of the solution in preventing suicide through the Suicide Prevention Council facilitated by CHIP, the Community Health Improvement Partners. It's through trainings, education, and awareness that the council is working to prevent suicide. With the San Diego County Health and Human Services grant, the council created a suicide prevention action plan to bring awareness to mental health and suicide in San Diego.
Education, removing the stigma attached, even to talk about mental illness. This is extremely important, and I think the coalition's work is just right at the top of the list of things that need to be done.
I got into it just hoping that on some level I could try to prevent anybody from going through what I had to go through, because it doesn't have to be that way.
A mental health condition should be treated as vigilantly as a physical health condition.
Suicide can happen to anyone, but for those with a mental illness, the risks are much higher. Anytime there is a suicide, it's like a ripple effect. The tragedy impacts the family, friends, and in many cases, the community. That's why knowing the signs of suicide, getting rid of the stigma of mental illness and suicide, and getting help if someone is at risk is so critical.
This barrier ultimately just delays treatment and makes mental illness worse and raises the risk of suicide dramatically. So targeting the stigma of suicide saves lives.
The biggest thing about getting rid of stigma is putting it out there. You have to talk about it.
The signs of suicide are feeling hopeless, desperate, trapped, talking about wanting to die or suicide, putting affairs in order, giving away possessions, withdrawal, isolation, major changes in behaviors, increased use of drugs or alcohol.
My whole idea is to hopefully educate people so that, again, when you see some of those signs, we need to act on some of those signs.
It's no different than any other of a million maladies that I could have. But if you can't talk about it, you can't get help. So that's where it has to start.
Everyone can save a life by knowing the signs of suicide and learning about preventing suicide. Help is available. It's up to us. Join our efforts at the Suicide Prevention Council. For more information about the Suicide Prevention Council, go to our website,